3 facts. 1. D&D is balanced around the idea that players are doing something like 8 encounters in an adventuring day. 2. A majority of players, when polled, say that at their table, spellcasters outpace martials, especially at higher levels. 3. A majority of players, when polled, say that they don't fight the intended 8 encounters in a day. This is all the same fact. D&D Next, the playtest that created the 5th edition we play today, was primarily done in a massive dungeon called Dead in Thay. And when the design team create new features, they balance them around the idea that players are doing 4 to 8 encounters in a day, often an average of 6. When they say encounter in this context, it doesn't have to be combat, but it's always a resource-draining encounter. Could be a trap that might deal magic, or a puzzle that requires spellcasting to solve, or other logistical challenges that drain party resources. When they say adventuring day, they aren't talking about a session we're playing, because nobody's expecting you to do 8 fights in a single session. They're saying adventuring day to mean between long rests. At the end of the day, you sleep and get all your resources back, and here's where the martial-caster divide comes in. Casters have spell slots that let them do incredibly powerful magic a limited number of times. Martials have better attacks that don't rely on powerful spell slots, and they can do them all the time, so they're better at average damage. So if you only do 1 fight between long rests, the casters go Nova and nuke the encounter, and the martials feel like the casters outpace them. But if you play the game as intended, in Dead in Thay or a similar dungeon, the caster will be incentivized to conserve their spell slots, and the martial will be better throughout. Rogues, for instance, do crazy damage without having to rely on any resource drain. They can always do their sneak attack. The fix is simple. Do more encounters between long rests. But if you don't like dungeons, that sounds like a terrible idea. How will I do 8 encounters in my urban fantasy game? You make long rests rarer. Welcome to Mystic Arts. My name is Daði. I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for over 10 years. I've talked before on the channel about my excursion resting rules, and there's always a flurry of questions from people, so I figured I'd make this video to explain the rules in more detail and try and anticipate some of the common questions I get asked about them. What is excursion resting? Well, it's a mechanic I created because I wanted to make wilderness travel more interesting. The short version of it is this. Characters cannot take long rests except when they're in town, but there's a few caveats I added on top to make it work better at my table as we continue to play with these rules. In this video, I'll cover the mechanic in more detail and explain to you some of the additional riders on the rules. So, what is the rule? Well, it replaces the current short rest and long rest rules in the rules glossary with these new versions. A rest is a period of extended downtime, at least 8 hours, available to any creature. During a rest, you sleep for at least 6 hours and perform no more than 2 hours of light activity, such as reading, talking, eating, or standing watch. During sleep, you're unconscious. After you finish a rest, you must wait another 16 hours before starting another one, and a rest is interrupted if you roll initiative, cast a spell, or take any damage. The benefits of a rest change depending on if it was a night's rest or a good rest. When you finish a night's rest, you get to spend hit point dice, and if there's a feature that's recharged by a short rest, you get it back. So basically, a night's rest is the same as a short rest, but it takes 8 hours, and you can only do 1 each night. Good rest. Taking 3 nights rest in the same location is a good rest. When you finish a good rest, you can gain the following benefits. This is kind of all the stuff you get at a long rest, including special, abilities that recharge on a long rest. You get your exhaustion level reduced, your ability scores returned to normal, and you get all your hit points back. The intention being that you go back to town, you wait a few days, and now you get all your stuff back. The gameplay loop that comes out of this is that players will want to go on excursions where they leave their safe haven, explore a little bit, and then go back to town to rest. And there's another thing we added on top to make it even more likely that they'll want to go back to town instead of resting in the wilderness. We introduced something called a safe haven. So, what is a safe haven? Taking a night's rest in a safe haven turns that night's rest into a good rest. So the mechanics of a short rest now become the mechanics of a long rest because you did it in a town. A safe haven is a place that is both safe and a haven. So basically, safe means we can't be attacked while here. We're secure. The things out in the forest can't get us, and we're able to relax because we're not worried about being attacked. Haven means that it's nice. It's comfortable. There's a bed, a place to relax. We can do our usual bedtime routine, and we have all our creature comforts. People often ask, what about Leomund's tiny hut? I don't think tiny hut gives you the benefits of a safe haven, because yeah, it's definitely safer than sleeping exposed to the sky, but it isn't a haven. It's a cramped bubble. So it's not at all comfortable, and it also isn't fully secure. It's an opaque dome. Creatures that can cast Dispel Magic can take it down. Clever creatures can camp outside of it and wait until the dome goes down. Hell, even dumb creatures could attack the hero sleeping in the bubble by crawling under it. Leomund's tiny hut is not a safe haven, but something like Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion should be. In my game, this means that the players have a base. That's what a safe haven is. It's a secure house they own and operate, ideally with a watchtower and a fireplace. I, for example, don't let a random tavern be a safe haven, especially not in a city where they might feel like they could get attacked in their sleep, or if the city is dangerous in general, such as if you're playing urban fantasy. But the point is that a DM should treat safe havens like a reward, something players can unlock in settlements, or build to feel safe, kind of like the new Bastion system. Now, you can take a good rest without having a safe haven. You take 3 nights' rests in the same location, so you spend 3 nights somewhere. You know, it's not as good as sleeping in your own bed, but it'll do. And as long as they stay in that town, don't roll initiative, cast spells or other cantrips, or take any damage, they can get the benefits of a good rest on their 3rd night's rest. This lets them try to take rests anywhere, even in the wilderness. Theoretically, they could spend 3 days on a specific location in the wilderness, and as long as they don't get hit with a random encounter, which I roll on a d6 and a 6 is a random encounter, they might be fine. So they could just roll with it. If you want to play in a grim, dark, salted, eldritch infested, high seas soaked expansion for 5e, the VOIDSEA is an ocean brimming with monstrous titans and magical technology, a reinvented naval combat, craftable magic items, modular ship components, and a brand new mutation system. You should go check out VOIDSEA, the sponsor of today's video, on their new Kickstarter they're launching. It's the newest expansion from Loot Tavern, which you know because they are the creators of Helliana's Guide to Monster Hunting. The Kickstarter is live now. It's a 350-page sourcebook with STLs you can print, tokens ready for your VTT, so go get your Mimic ship and sail on the VOIDSEA with the link in the description. I love this mechanic because it allowed me to get excited about hex crawls. Now, when my players are exploring hexes and they come upon a random encounter, there is a resource economy question. Do they conserve resources and hope the damage they take won't tax their hit dice too much? Or do they use the resources to avoid having to spend hit dice? It makes random encounters much more interesting because no longer do you get all your spell slots back on a long rest. And they can always try to take rests everywhere, so it's always a bit of a question of how safe is it. Like I said, I roll a random encounter, a d6 and a 6, that's a random encounter. But if they're in dangerous territory, or they've made their presence known somehow, like by shooting their guns, then I decide that a 5, or in terrible cases, a 4 on the d6 might trigger a random encounter. So the players are incentivized to go back to town and plan out their adventures in excursions into the wilderness. Hence the name. When I get a random encounter, what happens is I roll 2d8 on my inspiring random encounter table and see what they get. It might be combat, but it might not be. See my video on random encounters to know more about that. When people online hear these rules for the first time, they often wonder if this doesn't screw over one class or another because of the change. And it doesn't in my experience. The design intention was 8 encounters per adventuring day. So this brings all the classes closer to parity. They're more like how they should be balanced. Warlocks, for instance, rely on short rests mechanically, and they do well in this system because they get all their spells back when a wizard wouldn't. Wizards are the only class I've extended a little bit of a helping hand to in this system, and that's by changing the way Arcane Recovery reads. Normally it says you can gain some of your magical energy by studying your spellbook when you finish a short rest. You can choose expended spell slots to recover. The spell slots have a combined level equal to no more than half your wizard level round up, and none of the spell slots can be 6 or higher. For an example, if you're a 4th level wizard, you can recover 2 spells worth of spell slots, regaining either 1 2nd level spell slot or 2 1st level spell slots. Once you use this feature, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. I just let my wizard player ignore that last sentence, which is how the rule used to read in the 2014 Player's Handbook. That's helped loads. I also let my players craft using the 5e rules for crafting spell scrolls and healing potions, and they come in super handy. Potions of healing are the best thing in the world for a party playing with excursion resting. They hoard them like treasure, which just feels great. I've also added a couple of addendums to the system. They are knocking out a creature. Instead of being knocked out until you finish a short rest, these rules say that you become conscious in 1d4 hours, which is also how it used to work in 2014 D&D. Magic items that recharge at dawn were super powerful, so I changed them to recharge on the next Sunday's dawn, because Sundays are the holy day. Now, what about dungeon crawls? Surely this system makes them really difficult, especially if they're long crawls or long dungeons. And yeah, you're right. In that case, this is a harsh overcorrection. I mean, I don't mind the gameplay loop being about making excursions into the dungeon and returning home to town to take a long rest, but no short rests are already very tough. So what I'm going to do for my next big mega dungeon crawl is 3 mechanics. 1, they'll be able to secure floors and maybe be able to create a single safe haven in a central floor in the dungeon once they've cleared it. 2, they might occasionally find sanctuaries that'll let them take a short rest in 10 minutes by performing a ritual there. Probably at the cost of spending like 100 gold. You know, for a ritual sacrifice. Kind of ends up feeling like campfires in Dark Souls or something like that. Number 3, the greater holy symbol, or the symbol of God, lets them take rests in shorter periods of time. Symbol of God. This elaborate golden cross is the symbol of the Mother. It has 9 charges, and you can take the magic action to spend a charge and create one of the following 20-foot emanations for 10 minutes. Quick rest, creatures staying within the emanation for the duration can gain the benefits of a night's rest. So, 10-minute night's rest, or a short rest. Greater rest, creatures that are in the process of taking a night's rest within the emanation instead gain the benefits of a good rest. When there are no charges left in the cross, it crumbles to dust. This way, they can still rest in dungeons. And it's just a little kludge on top, it's not too bad. Of course, I won't use these mechanics in every game. They're good for telling specific kinds of stories where excursions are the primary way of adventuring. If you want a more heroic game where every encounter can be about going Nova against a massive, powerful creature and her army of minions, you can still do that, and I'm sure I'll do that in the future. And if you're thinking, why not use the gritty realism rules from 2014's DMG, then I just shrug and say they go a little too far for me. A week's rest just seems like a lot. I'd much rather make a little mini game and make it an interesting question of when and where to rest. Then you might say, but Daði, my players will try to long rest after every fight. Okay, first off, they have to let 16 hours elapse. And if they do, you can always attack them during their rest or while they're waiting. If they roll initiative, rest is interrupted. And finally, you can always make it so that when players waste time resting, the bad guys finish their ritual to kill the prince and summon the Screaming Mass. Or, you know, the Screaming Mass's middle manager, Screechy. The clock is ticking and the bad guys don't have to wait for the PCs to show up. You can make time important. It's the 3rd most important resource in D&D, right after actions and resources. You're the DM. You control the world. You shouldn't wait for anyone. If you want this whole system I talked about written down, it's in my HEXPLORATION rules on the Patreon, which I just did a huge update on with new layout, clarified rulings, and expanded sections on stuff like excursion resting, downtime jobs, and rolling for weather. Go check it out and support us directly, and if you've already bought the rules, either in the shop or you're currently a patron, the post has been updated to include the new rules at no additional cost to you. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and if you want to support us directly, consider joining our Patreon where you'll get all of these rules. And if you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.